biggest financial mistake that you've seen in this industry?
Throwing money at marketing where they don't know if it's performing or not. Our industry has become very shiny object syndrome a little bit, right? Where revenue is king, and that's not the case, right? So just because somebody says they're a $10 million business doesn't mean they're making money.
It's interesting, that cultural piece, like once you've got the secret sauce, it doesn't happen overnight. Like you're talking training team members, like your team, even right down to the technician, starts to protect the identity of that.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Profit Roadmap. We're your hosts, Ryan, Marlene, and Mike. And this is the premier podcast created for field service pros to help you grow your business, stay on top of the latest trends, and help you provide even more value to the communities that you serve. Now, before we get started, we've decided to make a change here in 2025 to make this podcast something that's just even more valuable for you. Now, you might recognize Mike Callahan from Simple Growth. Mike's going to be joining us as a guest host for a while to give some additional insight. And with his over 25 years of experience as an entrepreneur in the lawn care, landscaping, snow removal, and software industries, Mike brings a lot of expertise to the table. Now, for today's show, we wanted to talk about hitting a financial reset here in 2025. And to that end, we're super excited to welcome Jason Noel, a master advisor for CEO Warrior with over 20 years of leadership inside the home service industry. Jason, welcome to Profit Roadmap. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Good.
All right, so let's crack straight into it. So, Jason, let's learn a little bit about you before we dive too far into it. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and sort of where you got or how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So, Jason Noel, I live in Indianapolis, have my whole life. Been around the trades, the plumbing trade specifically, my whole life. My dad was a licensed plumber. My uncles and cousins owned plumbing businesses, and saw kind of what it did to my dad from a health perspective. And I had no interest in being a plumber. So I always tell everybody I wasn't smart enough to be a plumber. So I decided to go into management. So I technically got into the industry in year 2000 by accident. I was hired to be, I have an inventory control background. So I was actually hired as a manager at a local plumbing company here in Indianapolis. And just grew through that business for, I was there almost 15 years through buyouts and things through Clockwork Home Services and Direct Energy. And, grew to be the general manager there after, 12, 13 years. So spent 15 years there, left there to go to a local company to kind of help them get profitable again. They were struggling with profits, had gone through an attorney general claim and some different things. Just was having trouble getting profitable. So went there for about 5 years, helped them grow the plumbing department and then helped them become profitable as a company. Left there, became the GM of ARS here in Indianapolis, was there almost 3 years. Helped to grow the profitability there, almost 90%. So, in 3 years, and just was kind of to the point where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something else, right? Maybe not in the day-to-day kind of stuff. So kind of took a break, took off for about 3 months. Got a call from an acquaintance here at CEO Warrior from somebody I used to work with back in the day. And they thought this might be a good fit. And that's how I ended up here. So I've been here. Actually, my 3-year anniversary was just a couple of weeks ago. So I've been here right at 3 years.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Jason,
absolutely.
you touched on CEO Warrior a little bit. Can you tell us more about what you do at CEO Warrior, or what it is for those who are tuning in?
I would love to. So we're a coaching, training, implementation organization. Best practices organization. However, I feel like what separates us apart is kind of, we spend a lot of time in the operational stuff, helping people grow their businesses, become profitable and things like that. I know that's what part of our topic today. But I think the thing that separates us a little bit is the helping the personal growth as well. Because we know that, if your mind's not right, then none of the other stuff matters, right? So we spend a lot of time on the human aspect of that, the emotional side. Making sure their mind is right, just to make sure they're in the right mindset to be able to achieve the things that we want to help them achieve.
Love that.
Awesome.
Yeah, CEO Warriors actually been coaching businesses this was our 10-year anniversary. So help So our goal really as a client comes in is to help them scale to the point to where they're sellable, whether they want to sell or not, right? We always want to grow our business to sell. So that creates a lot of freedom and time for some business owners and things if they don't want to sell. So we don't recommend they sell. We want to build them to sell, if that makes any sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. Let's jump into the topic for today. So I'll ask the first question that we've got here, and then we'll kind of see where it goes. A lot of service business owners start the year with big financial goals. Obviously, you guys have the experience. Things don't always go as planned. What are some of the warning signs that you can tell it's time for a financial reset?
So I think it's kind of twofold, right? I think it's first and foremost is making sure you're setting so we'll talk about 2025 now. We just went through all 2025 goals with all our CEO Warrior members, right? It's setting realistic goals, right? And how do you come up with that is based on past history, right? So just really diving into that and making sure we're setting realistic goals first, not just from a revenue perspective, but all the way down to the bottom line, right? So we spend a lot of time talking about growth and top line, but we spend way more time on profitability. So just making sure it's realistic, making sure the numbers make sense, making sure we're planning ahead for expenses that are going to come out through the year, whether they need to hire people, right? It's just making sure that everything is on track in the beginning. As far as the financial reset goes, again, we'll track that on a monthly basis, and then it's really comes at that point from a financial reset. It comes down to cash flow, right? Because P&Ls are great, but P&L doesn't tell the whole story, right? Because there are things on your P&L that doesn't show up in your bank account, right? Or shows up in your bank account, but it doesn't show up on your P&L, right? So cash flow we focus on cash flow even more. We actually have a cash flow exercise and a template that we use it's 13 weeks out, and we plan it out for 13 weeks. Because what we want to see is not only their projection of revenue, but we want to see what their weekly expenses are, right? Because then it's a great exercise for everybody, because you wouldn't believe how many business owners do the exercise and see some expenses that they have they didn't even realize they have, right? So think about subscriptions maybe you have in your personal life that maybe you just pay for and you don't even realize it, right? So kind of the same thing in the business. And that's where we can really dive into their financial reset, is their cash flow. Because too many business owners they plan day to day off of their bank account, right? Which is a tough place to be mentally. So being able to actually dive into their cash flow and project out when to pay for expenses, and if you need to buy those things, right? And really diving into that 13 weeks out and continually doing that throughout the year is where we can really help them reset.
Awesome, Jason. I really love your perspective on the cash flow and how you're diving in. I think that's a big issue. We see a lot of people in the service industry. They're living just on top line revenue, not looking at the cash flow, the expenditures. I guess one of my questions I get a lot of times, especially in the service industry in the areas you're working, is as we go out and set that plan for 2025, is it in a bubble? Is it just with the consultant and the business owner? What level the team should actually be brought in? Is it the leadership team, right down to the guys and girls in the field? Kind of what's your perspective of what kind of buy-in or clarity of those plans going into this year? Who should be included? Who shouldn't be included? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, great question. I think all leadership in a business should be included. And again, it depends on the size of the business, right? Some of the smaller businesses don't have extra levels of leadership, but some of the larger businesses, their leadership should be not only involved, but potentially creating their department's budgets, right? Because we need their buy-in as well. So as I work through clients, I work with their leadership team. So if I do a planning call on their budget, their leadership teams that are involved are there. So we can talk about, I can talk to the plumbing manager, I can talk to the HVAC manager, I can talk to the lawn care person, I can talk to whoever is there to be able to help them actually build their department, because I think it's twofold, right? I want them to buy into that budget, but it's also a development opportunity for them as leaders, right? So as I was going, as I had leaders, I wanted them to build their own budgets, because that was part of me being able to help them develop as leaders as well, so they were able to progress in their career.
Awesome.
Really cool, Jason. Speaking of cash flow, also, we know that this is a hot topic for businesses regarding of the stage that they're in. How do you balance cutting expenses while still investing in growth and managing the cash flow that businesses have?
Yeah, great question. That's a tough one. So I think we come back to looking at their expenses, like really dialing down what expenses they have. because when I'm having conversations with clients, I mean, it's really one of two things or both, right? It's either you raise your revenue or you cut expenses, right?
Right.
It seems pretty simple, but that's not an easy task. So we look at all of those things to be able to determine what expenses can we cut. So I'll use marketing for example. We don't want to cut marketing because that's what we need to grow, right? So what else? But we want to make sure our marketing is producing what we need it to produce, right? So we need to understand all of our marketing avenues and return on investments and all of those things, cost per call, so we can decide where we want to spend our money, right? And not just throw money at the wall and hope it works, right? So, but there might be other expenses that we may want to buy a new van, but maybe we need to wait a couple of months, right? And that's where we dive into that cash flow, right? So it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. Do you buy a vehicle before you get the calls, right? Or do you get the calls before you buy a vehicle, right? And it's a science of kind of working through that. There's not a right answer. It's really just diving into those expenses and coming up with a good plan. You just got to know at the end of the day, you got to know your numbers, and that's where that information comes from. It's got to be a financial decision at that point.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a big balancing act.
It is.
And it also sounds like it changes business to business, right? Like it's not a black or white answer that one size fits all. What works for one company in cutting expenses so that cash flow is bigger and better won't work for the other one. So
yeah,
good
absolutely.
thing for people like you.
A cookie cutter. It's not a cookie cutter plan, right? It's like I dive into every individual business, and because people want, that people come in and they want the silver bullet, right? They want the easy answer, like tell me what to do. Well, we got to get a little deeper than that, right? There is no silver bullet. The silver bullet is hard work, but we just got to determine where to put our focus, right? And that's why it is an individual business type decision. We got to really dive into that business and say, okay, well, this is where you need to focus. It's different than somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. If there was a silver bullet, there'd be a lot more very successful businesses out there.
We would all be rich, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Jason, I love that you mentioned that silver bullet. And I think that's the biggest thing going into the year. We think that like, hey, whatever this is, it's going to fix us in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And as we hit the busy season, especially in the lawn care and landscape season, everything kind of goes awry. If you're committing with, CEO or another consultant, where you're bringing somebody in, like what would be your anticipated timeline? Like if you're going to put in the reps and actually stay the distance and actually not have the silver bullet syndrome, as you kind of said, what should be expected? How long is that to actually produce some results? You think and somebody should actually stay that course?
So I'll speak to CEO Warrior because we mapped out our journey, right? We know what it's been 10 years. We've mapped it out. We know what it is. We know what the successful plan is, right? We mapped it out for 3 years. Okay. At the end of 3 years, if you do everything that we suggest, you'll be at the point where you're able to either sell or you're kind of to the point where you have the financial freedom, right? So first year is really just dialing in your processes, making sure everything's clean, right? Making sure we're efficient. Year 2 is really just now we start to accelerate, right? And year 3 is where we dominate. So really you should see, I have clients now that are seeing, within 3 to 6 months, they're seeing benefits to the program because they're seeing cash flow increases. They're seeing we're helping them with some marketing things. And then also with our rebate program, right, they're able to kind of make some money that way too. So they're seeing benefits within 3 to 6 months. But as far as the whole plan to get where you need to get to, it's somewhere in the 2 to 3 year range.
Awesome. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's awesome. And just one other kind of tying in, you talked about leadership and basically personal development. And At what point in that 3-year journey does the business owner kind of get the leadership skills? So maybe if they're at 3 million, they're going to 5. I'm assuming those leadership skills have got to change, but I'm assuming if you're pulling the guys and girls out of the field potentially and upgrading them, I'm assuming that leadership development's got to happen for that organization to continue its path to those 3 years. At what point do you guys recommend pulling in that leadership or the additional people to build the future leaders, or is that after the 3-year point? What does that look like kind of your guys' growth plan?
No, it has to be during that 3-year point, 3-year time period. It's really, again, that's kind of a business to business decision as well, kind of where they at, where their growth happens, being able to, the success of if you look at any larger business, their success comes from their mid-level management, right? Mid-level leadership. which we spend a lot of time help develop that as well. The business owners are usually entrepreneurs. They're idea people, right? They're like get things done where they need people to come in and like, not to say that business owners don't do this, but they need people to do the work. Right? They need people to build the processes, be the operations guy, right? Be the guy that dives in and goes, that was a great idea. Let me do it. Right. So that's how some of these businesses are able to scale and grow. And we spend a lot of time developing mid-level leadership because we know that's how they're going to scale to the next level. They can't go to the next level with just the owner. Right. And too many times we get business owners, they have everything. They're like, I know how to do everything. Okay, well, that's not what happens if you're not here tomorrow, right? And that's how we help them build their mid-level management is we've got to build out the process. If I walked into your business tomorrow and I looked at your processes, could I run your business, right? And that's how we have to develop those people.
Those are great points. Jason, we've talked a lot about the financial aspect and the financial planning, which is great. Earlier in the intro, you talked about there being a mental toughness component to financial success as well. What's one financial habit you believe every service business owner should develop to see financial success as well?
So we see again, business owners coming in as entrepreneurs. They don't really want to dive into the numbers, right? They don't really want to get into the details and into the weeds. So it's being able to get them to understand like that's not an option. Right? We have to change the mindset. Whether you like the numbers or not, you have to know them, right? Even if it means you got to surround yourself with people that help you along the way. It's super important that you get the mental capacity of, yeah, this sucks, but I got to do it. I'm a business owner. I got to do it. It's my responsibility, right? So it's getting them to understand they have to know their numbers. They don't have to know every detail. They don't have to be a numbers nerd like me. They just need to know the basics to know what to look for, right? And be able to lead their team. So I think that's the biggest thing on the number side of it. It's just the mental side of it of, okay, numbers suck. They're scary, right? Like we get all like, I don't know them. Like I'm scared to death of them. And just getting them to understand like they're not that scary, right? Once we understand them, just like anything else, once we have confidence in them, they're not as scary. So it's just changing their mindset around that and really working one-on-one with them to help them understand them, right? Why they're important. That's the biggest thing.
Out of curiosity, what is that hesitation that keeps business owners from wanting to look at the numbers? What's that common denominator that you can pick up on business owners saying, no, I don't want to look at them?
What we see mostly here at CO Warrior with new clients is most of our clients have been technicians, right? And decided they wanted to be business owners, right? Probably things you guys see as well. So they're amazing technicians. They're great with their hands. They're problem solvers. They don't understand the business side of it, and it makes them nervous because they don't know it, right? They're used to being the expert at their field, right? And now they're getting out of their comfort zone and they're looking at these numbers, going, "Oh, I don't understand these things," right? So it's really more of a confidence thing, really, than anything, and it's just never something they've been exposed to. So as they start coming into our world and they're going through onboarding and they're looking at some of the stuff that we're going through on. Like I have never looked at these things before, right? That's why you hired us, right? So I think it's more just the fear of the unknown than anything, to be honest.
Yeah, I know we definitely have listeners like in that bucket right now. You know, they went from technician to owning their business, and those numbers freak them out.
Yep.
I guess my question here is to try to hopefully give some hope to those individuals. Do you generally find that once they gain that understanding and they're on the other side of that things are less intimidating, or, you know?
I do. And again, it's just really breaking it down to us being able to break it down with them kind of in bite-sized chunks, right? Just, we don't have to look at our numbers and understand the whole entire thing, right? It's breaking it down on what's important to look to, right? I break down a P&L. Like when I coach clients, I have a 4-step breakdown of a P&L, what to look at first and in what order, right? And then where to take action steps from there, right? So we keep it kind of simple, but it's just getting everything organized correctly, and just them being comfortable with. It's really them being open to change, right? And that's kind of where the mindset shift comes from. Is I just need you to be open to understand what needs to happen, and then we'll help you through the process.
It kind of piggyback on Ryan's question there. So like kind of Michael Gerber said, a technician on entrepreneurial seizure. That's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
if someone was to walk away from this podcast here and say, that's kind of me, that fits me. I'm a great technician. For some reason, I've got 10, 11 trucks around. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If I was to walk away from this podcast, Jason, what would be the first thing, if I'm in that situation, that you'd recommend that, like, this is going to start off the year right, and it's going to at least get us in a positive cadence to start to have a handle on those numbers?
Yeah, I think connecting with someone that can help them through that process, for one. Number two is making sure our P&Ls are lined out correctly with our chart of accounts, and just making sure we're capturing the right information. We see a lot of things too, where we see a lot of out of period expenses, right? So we see where people buy things in December and then they don't complete the job until January, and we never get true numbers. And right, being able to dive into that and understanding why that's important, to be able to get really good, accurate information. So I think the easy answer is make sure you have good, clean P&Ls, and make sure you're getting them timely, and then understanding your cash flow as well. Because like I said, on the P&L, a lot of times you're not going to see the vehicle loan payments, and if they have a business loan and things like that, you're going to see they're going to be on the balance sheet rather than the P&L. So understanding the difference and really understanding their cash.
Awesome. And you hit on it, but I guess maybe just to piggyback on this, somebody's looking at this is what I need to do. I'm assuming if we're going into 2025, just seeing 24 numbers right now for the first time is probably not the perfect timing. So
Right.
If they're going to dig into that first step you suggested, what's the cadence? If I'm going, we finished the month, how soon after that month ending should I be able to look at that books, or is it okay just to look at it once a year? I'm assuming probably not.
No, I want to look at it. I want to see them monthly. So I'll just talk CEO Warrior for a second. So we have what we call war planning, right? That's our budgeting. As we create the 2025 war plan, which is our 2025 budget, every month our clients has a section in there where they have to go in and put their monthly numbers, right? So now we can compare to how did we do to last year? How did we do compared to budget? And that gives us a true picture. I want that stuff. I want your numbers done by the 15th of the next month. That's even being gracious. I would rather see it more like the 10th. I can tell you back in my PE days, we had to have them done after 6 business days. So I know it's doable with very large companies. However, we give a little grace here with, as people are learning their numbers, to be like the 15th of the month. But if we wait much longer than that, like it's hard to shift gears to make any improvements, right? So we got to be able to have it at a decent time, so we can look back and go, what do we need to improve on to make it make sense the next month?
Those are great. Jason, sometimes financial reset affect things more than just marketing or whether you can afford another van or equipment. In the situation that a financial reset for a company affects the team, how do you recommend a business owner communicates the reset and how it affects the team, if at all?
Yeah, I think it depends on the level of the team members it's going to affect. And again, I almost feel like that's an individual kind of, like that would be a consultant type thing I would want to do individually with that business owner, right? So I don't ever want to, my first step is never going to be cut people, right? It's always going to be how do we, so if I'm looking at a P&L and their overhead percentage is too high, right? How can we improve our revenue and our gross margin to make our overhead percentage better so we don't have to resort to that, right? That's what I want to look at first. So then you dive into pricing, right? You dive into efficiencies, you dive into conversion rates, you dive into all of those things prior to making it a situation where you got to start letting people go. I want that to be the last resort. Now, if it gets to that, then the communication needs to be individually, and how we would handle that would be business to business. So again, I don't know that there's really like a cookie cutter answer to that. I think it's a one-on-one consultant type thing, which we work through those things as well.
Yeah. And those conversations are always hard. So I like hearing that there are ways to go around where the first answer for a financial reset is not necessarily cutting staff, especially if you can save heads and still be profitable and improve cash flow with that too.
Almost in all scenarios, it doesn't always have to be cutting overhead, right? It's really probably, I mean, most challenges are done in the cost of goods and in your margin and just your efficiencies and your pricing and things like that. Conversion rates, field conversion, phone conversion, right? We can go about all that stuff all day long. But typically the last answer is cutting overhead.
Good.
And I guess, Jason, to touch on that, I guess if we're kind of in that area, and a lot of people maybe going into 2025 are obviously in that COGS, that direct labor, that do you have any tips or tricks if we're trying to get some more efficiency or actually have those technicians in the field understand how their day-to-day operations, if they're winning or losing, actually attributes to the financial mission or goal?
Yeah.
Is there anything in your experience that you've seen that's been helpful to say, hey, what you're doing today contributes to this? This is how we actually get to where we need to go. Obviously, you might probably not telling you're trying to avoid cutting heads, but
Right.
At some point, I think there's usually a gap. Do you have any tips or tricks around that?
Yeah, I think as we're diving into cost of goods and gross margins, it's really understanding, making sure P&Ls are departmentalized, so we make sure we understand what departments are kind of challenged. Then diving even deeper than that into labor percentages, material percentages, just percentages of revenue in general, right? And then as we identify issues there, we look at pricing, right? Then once we've looked at pricing, making sure they're priced correctly, then we're going to look at conversion rates, right? We're going to look at average tickets. We're going to look at KPIs to make sure they're performing the way they should, right? I want to do that, and I would want to do that individually. So I would want to do that by each service expert or each technician, right? Because then I can kind of understand where to put my focus, right? So if I understand those things, if I've got one guy that's got a low closing rate and I got another guy that's got a low average ticket, right? My coaching and my training is different, right? Those are different issues. So we have to get much, much deeper, and it comes back to, I'll say, knowing your numbers a ton, but it comes back to knowing your numbers, because you have to know that information on where to put your focus. Otherwise, you're just kind of throwing it on the wall and hoping it sticks.
Awesome.
Yeah. Kind of the flip side of that, the cost of goods sold, increasing revenue, pricing strategy. What role does that play in financial reset?
A ton. And I can tell you, as we onboard new clients, one of their first things they do is their cash flow template. The second thing they do is we build their billable hour and their billable day, right? And that's how we when we go into pricing. So it's making sure all of their pricing is correct. It's super, super important. Now, we get all the time, like, I'm already charging more than everybody else. I can't charge more, and like, at that point, now it becomes a training thing, right? So now we shift to, it's because maybe you're not building enough value, right? And we have training for all levels of employees within the trades industry, right? So like now it becomes, we just need to build more value. We need to work on training, because your expenses are your expenses, right? So this is what you need to charge to make the profitability you need to make. And profit is not a bad thing. Profit is something a business owner should be proud of and should make, right? So it's really diving in individually and then training those people properly to be able to roll with the new prices, really. And we get caught, and business owners get caught up in, customers are going to tell me no when we raise the price, right? Customers don't know. Customers don't know when you raise the price, right? Only you know, because most of the time it's here. Most of the time it's mental, right? And we need to overcome that before we can help train our people and really develop that it all comes back to customer service at that point.
Yeah. I know in like the mechanical contracting space, which is kind of the field edge side of the house, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and so on, that's definitely the case. But on the green side, more the service autopilot stuff, when we have like recurring things, like recurring mowing and other services in the green industries, sometimes you have to raise prices over there. Is there when you have to do that for those recurring services, maybe it's maintenance agreements on the mechanical contracting side, is there like a right way to communicate that out to your client base?
I think it depends on the size of your base, right? So I think if you have a large reoccurring business like that, maybe it's just communication with a postcard or something. Because here, right, and it's all about the message. Because here's the thing: what hasn't gone up in price, right? It's not like you go to the gas pump and it's cheaper than it was 4 years ago, or than it was 4 years ago. So prices have gone up, right? So most people understand that prices are going up. So it's just, I think it's probably in that scenario, it's probably a postcard, or like I think emails kind of pass now, so I think it's probably a postcard or even a text message, or just letting the client know. I mean, I'm kind of old school. I just think you pick up the phone and call them and let them know. But again, if you got thousands of customers, like that's going to be tough. So
yeah, that might not be doable from a labor perspective.
Yeah.
Say that from a marketing perspective, if you already have a preferred method of communication with your base, use that. It could be postcards. If for your business it's text or emails, use whatever method of communication you have already set for your base so that you can ensure that they're getting that communication. And then back to Jason's point, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So making sure that you're communicating in a way that gets that point across. And you also explain why the price increase is happening and not just say it's happening period and assume that everybody knows it's because of the what's going on in the market. But Jason, going back to working with service businesses, and aside from entrepreneurs not wanting to look at numbers out of fear or being overwhelmed and having to know their numbers, what's the biggest financial mistake that you've seen in this industry?
Throwing money at marketing where they don't know if it's performing or not. Because, and again, I think this comes back. I kind of mentioned this earlier. I'll touch on it again. It's our industry has become very shiny object syndrome a little bit, right? Where revenue is king, and that's not the case, right? So just because somebody says they're a $10 million business doesn't mean they're making money. Right. And we see that all the time. And we talk about grow. And I think that's where, and again, I love marketing companies, don't get me wrong, but they're everywhere. Right. And just there's some, and here's the thing is like some marketing companies are going to be good for somebody in your area, but maybe not in my area. Right. So it's all about, it's understanding your market as well and what works in your market. And we just see too many people say, I have a marketing problem, I'm going to spend more money. And most of the time, they don't have a marketing problem. They have a performance problem. So as soon as somebody tells me they have a marketing problem, I'm going to say, what's your phone conversion, right? What's your field conversion? I want to understand what your numbers are because they might be getting calls. They're just not performing on them. But that's probably the biggest expense we see is just money being thrown at marketing, not sure if it's working.
So meaning like leads are not followed up on, or there isn't a good ROI on the dollar spent on marketing.
Yeah, ROI, cost per call. They don't know any of those things. They just want to I want to grow, so I'm just going to spend $10,000 more a month, and magically it's going to happen, right? And that's not the case.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it be nice? Yes.
Jason, I want to personally thank you because as we're going to SEC, the conference we have usually remote or in person. A lot of times, if you're at the bar or networking after the event, all you hear is top line revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, amen. Thanks for mentioning bottom line revenue. Because I don't care if you're running a $10 million company and you're running 2 or 3% of the bottom line.
Yeah.
I think our industry, the service industry, more and more business owners really. I would hope we start talking about. Let's talk about the bottom line. What actually is going on? It's not that big shiny number up here because behind the scenes it could be a disaster.
Yeah. Just look at all these industry Facebook pages, right? That's all you hear about.
Yeah.
10 million, 20 million. I ran a $60 million company. Whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, right. It doesn't matter. Like, what is your profitability? Like, I want to make, like, that's how you keep a good sustainable business. And honestly, if you want to grow to sell, companies don't buy on revenue. They buy on profitability and opportunity. Right. So like, that's where we really need to change our focus.
Pulling that back into the finances, it just kind of hit me. You're diving into all these numbers, which I totally agree with. One of the things I see, at least in our industry, when we're talking to folks is, what's your opinion on a market-based wage for the owner? A lot of times they're just taking distributions and the cost of their actual replacement if they get hit by a bus today is never built into the actual financials. Yeah.
So I always advise and prefer that they pay themselves a salary and on the P&L. Because they see it. So I think they see it incorrectly, right? They see it as an expense and it makes their profitability look less, but that's not the case, right? Because if someone's coming in to buy you, they're going to look at all the ad backs and that's an ad back, right? So I like to see that on when I get a P&L and there's no owner's salary on there, I'm like, what is your true profitability? Because I don't know what, and again, business owners have the right to do this, right? But they run things through their business that maybe we don't see on the P&L, right? And they have that opportunity. But like, I need to understand those things to be able to help you guide your business. So I kind of went off topic there. But to answer your question, I think they should show a salary on their P&L and take a salary.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because we had a client that sold that his wife was using one of the business cards at TJ Maxx for the kids' clothing. They couldn't decipher it.
Right.
He lost over $100,000 in the acquisition because it was just a gray area. They couldn't attribute.
And that happens a lot.
So don't go to the movie theaters on the business is my takeaway. Is that right?
I'm not saying no. And that's what I tell. I'm an advisor. Here's what I tell everybody: it's your business. Here's how I advise you to do it. It's your business. You do what you want. Just understand that this is what I think you should do. Right.
Speaking of telling or not telling business owners what to do, have you experienced any hesitation on shifting finances around on a reset because a business owner believes it's worked and maybe they can prove that it has worked, but with your experience, you can say, hey, those dollars are better spent on this side. Any hesitation from a business owner to follow financial advice because it's been fine for now?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. That's constant.
How do you manage that? And what would you say to business owners now experiencing that hesitation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it comes down to building a relationship and building trust and proving that I kind of know what I'm talking about. Right. And I mean, really, that's it. It seems simple, but that's it. Right. It's like, I understand you think it's been working, but let me show you why it's not working. Right. And then let's talk through how it should be working. Right. So I think it's building trust, honestly. It's building trust that they know that they think I know what I'm talking about.
And maybe it's not necessarily that it's terrible and not working, but maybe you have a better way of doing it. Maybe with your experience, you can say, hey, listen, I know your hesitation to changing numbers around because it's working, but it could be even better. And so maybe it's getting that point across that while it's fine, it could be better. And then that means better cash flow and all of the good numbers that we're wanting to see.
Well, I think as I was working with somebody like that, I mean, my question to them would be, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to get out of this? Right. Yeah. Because if you're wanting to become scalable, you're wanting to become sellable, you're wanting to create financial freedom, right? A lot of times that's why you joined with CEO Warrior. So I want to understand what they want to accomplish, because if I don't understand their why, I don't even know where to go from there. Right. Sure. So I think that's where I can build a relationship with them, is like, I need to understand what you want to accomplish here. Okay, great. Let me show you how to do it. Right. Again, at the end of the day, it's your decision, right? You got to do the work. And then if they need to, we have clients that I can say, we'll talk to this client. They wanted the same thing and they finally gave in and started doing it, and they're seeing the results of it now. Just talk to them, ask them.
Nice. That I would assume that typically helps, right? If they see somebody else in their spot.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think every time I talk to somebody from CEO Warrior, which is always an absolute pleasure, it comes up at some point in the conversation of finding the why. Is that something that's just really core to the mentality at CEO Warrior? Or is that something they instill in you guys? Or how does that work?
It is. And that comes back to almost at the beginning of this conversation, right? It's like being able to understand and help the person side of it. We know we can help them with the business side of it, right? But until they become open and coachable and trainable and all of those things, none of that really matters. So absolutely understanding the why is super, super important. So that's kind of how we always start out, is I want to know what drives you, right? And then what do you want to accomplish? And then we can build a path on how to get there. That's why there's no cookie cutter answer. That's why everybody wants something different. That's why we do it individually, right? That's why we build businesses individually. And something we do here that's different than everybody else as well, we have a ton of one-on-one coaching, right? So when I'm not on a podcast, right, I'm on my computer doing a one-on-one with business owners and leaders, and I'm coaching them through their businesses, right? That's what I do all day long. And then I train in New Jersey as well. So like, that's the thing, is it's building a plan for that individual, but you got to understand. I mean, we create personal relationships here. I mean, I have personal relationships with my clients, right? So I understand what drives them. I know most of them. I know their kids' names. I know their spouses, right? I understand their business inside and out, and that helps us really drive them to achieve their why.
Jason, this might be a little out of left field, but I hear this a lot at these conferences that we're at, and we're in these groups with, the Academy and that here at Service Autopilot Field Edge. How do the mindset of business owner coming in a lot of times say, I just can't find the right people. It's all the people around me. It's not me. I kind of think all problems eventually become leadership problems. Mm-hmm. But I guess if we're thinking that, listening to this, like, this all sounds great, but I can't find anybody to work, and it's everybody else's fault. I could run this business if I could find 10 people like me. Mm-hmm. going into 2025, I know a lot of people like in this ecosystem are starting to think like that a little bit. Like, what would be your attempt, or what would you say to kind of overcome that mindset shift as we're going in?
Yeah, I would start by saying it's 100% a leadership problem, right? So once you accept that, then we can move on to the next step. The next thing is you're never going to find 10 people like you, right? And if you expect that, it's not going to happen, right? So they don't have the same buy-in you do. They don't have the same ownership you do. They don't have the same stress you do. Like it's not realistic, right? And I think surrounding yourself with really great people that have strengths that maybe you don't have is a huge area to be able to develop your business, right? So, I mean, I'm an operation. So as a general manager, I'm more of an operations process kind of guy, right? So I surrounded myself with good salespeople, trainers, things like that, things that I didn't feel like I was very good at. And two, I didn't really want to do. Let's be real, right? And I think that's how you really start to grow your business, is to be able to develop leadership and be humble. It's all about humility, right? If you can be humble enough to say, I'm not good at that, and you find somebody that is, like that'll take you leaps and bounds.
Awesome.
Yeah, you don't have to be the best one at everything, right?
What's that?
I said you don't have to be the best one at everything. You can use your time wisely as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, focusing on numbers and making those important changes, and then shift other responsibilities to somebody else.
And if you think you're the best at everything, you're wrong, first and foremost, right?
It's always a bigger fish.
It's not physically possible, right? And once you're humble enough to realize that, and then you surround yourself with really good people that do the things great that you don't want to do. I mean, really, it's about what you don't want to do, right? As we sit here today, I can train sales. I don't want to. I'd rather dive into your P&L and be a problem solver that way. I don't want to train sales, right? But my counterpart, Kevin and Sandy, are great at training sales. They don't want to dive into your P&L, right? And that's why we're a great team.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully put. When it comes to, we almost talked about, shifting the mindset, accepting that, you're never going to find the 10 people like you, all that stuff. It being about humility. Do you think that pays dividends on the culture side as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because as soon as, I think from a culture perspective, as the leader shows the humility, right? And can understand that they're not all, all knowing, right? It's just not the case. Like, I think that shows some vulnerability, really, right? And which really does it does help your culture a ton.
Yeah, when it comes to the I guess the culture side of it, one of the other things that you mentioned is, you're never going to find the 10 people like you. They're never going to have the same buy-in, that sort of thing. Is there anything that you guys have found within CEO Warrior that helps to get that buy-in from the employees? Yeah,
so we do. So something we do here is we do a lot of profile, like personality profiling. So we use DISC profile, and we do it internally. And I'm kind of the person that kind of runs that part of it. And it's really important to understand how people are put together, right? And most important, like, I don't ever say, based on your profile, we won't hire you for this position. However, it helps me understand how to communicate with you and manage you, right? So you could have somebody with the same exact processes and rules and everything, but you may communicate with them differently to accomplish what you need to accomplish, because they would understand it better, right? So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of the direction we want to go with people, is to understand. Like if you were to hire a operations manager and it's going to be your right-hand man, right? I want to look at your profile, and then I want to hire somebody that's completely the opposite of you.
Yeah, no, that does answer the question. I know here at Service Autopilot, we did Colby for a long time. Yeah. Marlon, Mike, did you guys ever do the Colby test?
Yeah,
I've done it.
Yeah, I'm actually the opposite of what everybody thought I was. I'm actually a quick finder and not quick to implement. So,
oh man, I would have pegged you as a quick start all day.
Yeah. So
anyway,
there, the co-founder of Service Autopilot, actually lost a massive bet at, I think, Service Autopilot as well.
That's actually really funny.
He's definitely a quick start. So just the opposite. I know we're getting near the end here, but Jason, I guess just to kind of wrap that up and put a bow on it there. You talked about the leadership and humility. At what point, or does in your process, does core values become a process?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Clarity. Does that kind of create that consolidarity? Like any
Yeah.
thoughts or experiences around that?
Absolutely. So part of our owner's journey that we, as people come on board, part of that is building their core values. Part of that is building their vision, their painted vision, right? And all of that, because that helps with your culture as well, right? So that is part of the onboarding. Super, super important for us here at CEO Warrior, that we help develop those, and that really gets ingrained in their business, right? They need to live and breathe those core values. So absolutely, that's a great point. And yeah, we really spend a lot of time on that as well. We talk every single training we go to, or every single training we teach, we talk about core values, and we want to make sure everybody in the business knows their core values, right? Because we don't like if next week we're teaching a bunch of road warriors, which is our service technician,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's going to be one of the things is like, what are your core values in your business? We want to make sure you know what they are. Right? Because if they don't, then we fail them, because we want to make sure we go back to those owners and say, okay, why do they not know their core values? And do you even have core values? Right? Because that should be built during their onboarding.
Yeah, and I know my early years of building my company, the first one was literally, we got really clear on that. We eventually started to hire, train, and eventually fire, coach out to those core values. And I think like a lot of people, when you're looking at like from the leader down, you're starting to build many leaders. It's interesting that cultural piece, like once you've got the secret sauce, and it doesn't happen overnight, like you're talking training the team members, like your team, even right down to the technician, starts to protect the identity of that. And if somebody comes in and they're not a good fit, like they will literally start to reject them, and like the leadership team will find out sooner than later, and we're coaching them out, but they start to protect that secret sauce they've got. So
absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's been at least instrumental in my 3 businesses now going on, and it's fun to see when that starts to take place, how that the culture protects itself.
Yeah, you're spot on there, and that's great, right? So we do. So here too, or we do some on-sites and things too, right? So we go into people's businesses and things, and you can, like to your point, Mike, you can see that, right? You can see when you walk into a business whether they live by their core values or not, right? And that's a great opportunity for us to be able to coach the leaders, and identify that, or praise the leaders for getting that culture in place, right? So that's an amazing point. You're spot on.
Yeah, it's just not on the wall. They live and breathe it. You can feel it. My buddy Garrett Matthews down in Shreveport, Louisiana, you walk in the guy's shop, and it's like it's just something out of this world. But it's like as soon as you walk in there, they have their own special sauce. And I think their main core value is we have fun.
Yeah.
If you don't align to that, you are not going to survive in that office, I will tell you.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
That's a great core value.
Yeah, we did an on-site. A company's called Handyside, and they're up in Pennsylvania, and we went in there, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and like their core values are everywhere. And there's not anybody in, like we all interview all their leadership and some key people in their business. They all know the core values, right? So like that was huge, and you can see it in their culture.
Yeah, it makes a difference. It really does. I like that you mentioned that you bring it up, like it comes up at training. Like it's not just something you write down once and then like no one ever talks about it again. Like you really got to put it, make it a part of your business, because we've talked about culture on this podcast a lot, and some of the questions that we get around that are like, well, we did our core values and then nothing changed.
Nothing.
Well,
yeah.
I like what you said, Jason, of having it up on the walls everywhere, in every room, in the restroom, in the training room, offices, things like that. It sounds cheesy, but if it's not in front of you, it's almost not top of mind with all the day-to-day activities that you have, the responsibilities, the hustle, the grind. So seeing it every day does help quite a bit.
Absolutely 100%.
Yeah. Jason, any final parting thoughts on how field service businesses can set themselves up to make 2025 a success for you financially, and in all aspects, and also any events that you have coming up that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think here at the end, I think probably what I would say is make sure you're planning out your 2025. I know we're almost through the first month, which I can't believe it. But making sure 2025 is planned out realistically, right? And then not just plan it out, but then kind of like your point on the core values is what are your action steps behind on how you're going to achieve those things, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is just making sure we're putting some action behind our numbers, right? So people get caught up in their numbers and they're like, okay, now just go do it, right? And there's not any action there. So I think building the action plan behind that is super important. And then as far as events coming up, so we have a service business live event, which is open to the public. That's an event where anyone can come in and kind of see. It's 2 days. and someone could come in and see what CEO Warrior is all about, right? It's 2 days. Again, it's in Nashville, Tennessee. It's March the 6th and 7th. And we're taking registrations now. So if you have any interest in that, just reach out. We'll get you connected with someone that can talk to you about the event. But it's literally an event where you can come and see what we do at CEO Warrior. You'll leave with a plan. You'll leave with a business plan. And then, you're part of the family at that point.
Right on. Awesome. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, we'd love to have you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. I appreciate you jumping on the Profit Roadmap.
It's an honor.
And we'll see you in Nashville in March.
Well, sounds great. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Well, to make it easy for everybody, we'll put the link to that in the show notes too. So it'll be quick and easy.
Cool.
But Jason, Marlene, Mike, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.